So hopefully you're not like me, but if you are like me, this video might be useful. I've discovered that I am nearly physically incapable of drawing someone who is not within like 3 years of my age. And this is typically fine because most of my characters are in their late teens to early 20s age range. But the problem is that anyone who's in their 20s was once a lot younger than that, and if you're a character artist or if you're trying to get some illustrations done for a story, you might need a good reference of your character when they were a kid. My main issue, I guess, is not with drawing young characters themselves, but with making them believably look like the younger version of a character, or in other words, keeping that resemblance. Now, obviously, this method is really inconvenient for a lot of different scenarios, but for this specific case, I wanted to make solid character references for the two main characters of my story, and I wanted to really make sure that their younger versions actually looked like younger versions of them. I think there are two bad paths you can end up going down if you're trying to draw younger versions of your characters. One, you end up just drawing them completely normally, and your only strategy of telling the audience they're young is giving them a propeller hat and a lollipop. Two, you draw a believably young-looking character, but even though they have the same hair color and eye color, they kind of don't look like the same person. Their features don't look like they're the younger features of that same character. Now, true to the title of this video, I'm going to show you the cheating way of making a character reference for the young version of your character. So first, you're going to need to have their regular reference drawing handy, like I do here. You might have a lot of different layers going on, so if that's the case, you'll need to combine all of them into one layer. On Procreate, an easy workaround is to swipe down with 3 fingers, click copy all, and then swipe down again with 3 fingers and click paste. This will create a new layer that has all the layers under it combined into one. Now on this new layer, we're going to use what's called the liquify tool. If you haven't heard of it before, it's basically a tool that lets you push around parts of your drawing like it's all made of liquid. I kind of don't use this tool ever, or any tools for that matter, so I use it very simply. Before we start facial surgery, let's get down some features that will help your character look younger. Of course, this list isn't exhaustive and it can totally depend on the specific case, but here are some younger features that I like to keep in mind generally. Thinner eyebrows, getting rid of any makeup, rosier, fuller cheeks, rounder face shape, no eye bags, smaller nose, larger eyes, and larger forehead. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing I did was select everything and make the whole drawing smaller. Then, using the liquify tool, I pushed the chin up to make it not as pointy and pushed the cheeks out to make the face rounder. I also widened her eyes and got rid of the dark circles under them because she hasn't faced all that horrible dread and agony yet. Of course, it's also important to think about the life circumstances that surrounded your character during this period of life. Maybe they wore their hair differently, they probably had a completely different fashion sense, maybe they smiled more, all that stuff is good to keep in mind. Here's the finished product, young Paula next to regular Paula. Next, I got to work on making a younger version of Ray. Like before, I started by selecting everything and making all of it smaller at once. Then I made his face rounder and I selected his eyes and dragged them down to make his forehead look bigger. I also made his nose a little smaller, redrew his eyebrows to make them thinner, got rid of his dark circles, and made his eyes wider. I added a little more red to his cheeks and made sure I gave him a haircut that would have made sense for this period of his life. Here's the finished product, young Ray next to regular Ray. Of course, it's a great skill to be able to freehand different age versions of your characters, but I find this method really useful for creating references that have consistent facial features across your character's lifespan. If you have any other strategies that you like to use, let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.